everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of Rinkside. Here with myself, Ryan Steeves, as usual, and my co-host, not the guest yet, the co-host, Emma Miskew. Sorry, Emma, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
Awesome. The clock, I'm watching the clock for you. My nerves are climbing. I don't know how your nerves are as we get closer and closer to Milano, Cortina. How you feeling?
Not bad, actually, but we do have a training camp scheduled before. So it's something to look forward to as a team prior to leaving to Italy. And I'm sure once that's done and the next thing on the agenda is flying to Italy, the nerves will start to set in a little bit. Nerves, excitement, but I feel ready. So I'm excited that I have another couple weeks to just get all my ducks in a row and get more reps in, but I'm ready to go.
And not the team's first dance, so hopefully you can draw on some of that experience and calm the fears, and that's good.
Yeah, exactly. It
Yeah.
is nice that it's not the first time for two of us. So
Yeah,
the
that's right.
others,
First time for a few of you. That's right.
yeah.
Well, we could talk about that for hours and gain some fun insights what it's like to be in your head right now. But we're really fortunate today. This is a topic that I've wanted to cover for some time, Emma, and that is the world of youth volleyball, competitive volleyball, club volleyball. I've got some people in my world of hockey whose children play volleyball and who are thriving, enjoying this sport and talk about it all the time. And it's something I've had no insight into. I don't know you, Emma. I played high school volleyball. That was about the extent of it.
Yeah, not even for me. Not even high school
Yeah.
volleyball for me. I think I was elementary school. And then
Wow.
I had to start narrowing down my sports, but I always really liked it.
Yeah. Well, now I learned going to my son's volleyball game in grade 7 that it's actually called triple ball, which was a whole new learning curve. But one of the top clubs in the region, at least from what others tell me, and doing my research totally seems valid, is the Maverick Volleyball Club here in Ottawa. And so we reached out, and on very short notice, Greg Skotnicki here to join us today, the executive director at Maverick. Most impressively, Greg, you said yes and you joined us, and now you're tuning in from Colombia on vacation. That is the dedication of those at Maverick Volleyball. So, Greg, welcome to Rinkside.
Hey, thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah. Yeah. So the show's called Rinkside, but we tend to talk about a lot of different sports, and really it's designed for that parent on the car ride who's maybe, down the rabbit hole of baseball or hockey or something. And we just want to shine a light on a different sport and what it's like to be an athlete in that world. So Greg, correct me if I'm wrong. You were a player within Maverick a long, long time ago and sort of grown up through the system, right?
Well, yeah. So the club started about 40 years ago. We just had our 40th anniversary this past summer.
Wow.
And so on one of the first teams I played back then, and then there was a bit of hiatus after that, but got back into it a few years ago.
Okay. So you're an executive director right now. What's your day-to-day like with Maverick?
So, well, let's see. The club's really transformed over the last 5 years. So, although we started 40 years ago with 2 or 3 teams, we're now at, between around 35 or so competitive teams. We have about, and that's about 350 kids playing on those teams. We have another 350 kids playing in kind of like a house league type scenario. And then there's probably about 2,000 or 3,000 kids that are doing learn to play programs.
Oh my gosh.
So the club has really, and it's grown since COVID, probably about 20% a year, year over year. So we've probably doubled in the past four years or so. And so, for me right now, we're trying to really professionalize the organization and get to a point where, the founders, Kerry and Chris McLean, who started the club back 40 years ago and have now just retired, we want to make sure that this legacy continues. And so we've kind of moved from the volunteer model to a full on, we've got a lot of paid staff and folks that are now running the programs.
Yeah. Those kind of growth numbers are insane. I can't believe those numbers. Just the volume of children playing within your club alone too. I don't know. I mean, that starts to eclipse some of the hockey clubs in town that are, of course, a dominant sport in our culture, in our climate. But what is leading to that kind of growth year over year in terms of registrations and participation?
Great question. We're not 100% certain. So part of it is I think we have a pretty good reputation. So word of mouth is the number one reason that kids come to play with us. We have had sort of a dedicated group of coaches that have always focused not just on training technical skills, but how do you also instill valuable life skills. And so I think that's also led to folks coming. Girls in particular, we have it's probably about a 3-to-1 ratio of girls to boys in the club. What we see is that for boys, they're heavily into soccer, heavily into hockey, heavily into football or all these other sports. And then they kind of get to 14, 15 years of age. And one, they might realize I'm not going to play in the NHL. And so want to try something new. And so we see a large influx of boys start to come in then. And then on the girls' side, I think it's a bit different because I don't think there are as many, and you guys would probably know better than I do, but I don't think there are that many, or as many girls' teams as boys' teams in hockey. There are definitely not as many football teams, and there are fewer rugby teams and all of this. So it's a natural sport for the girls to gravitate to. And they also have a huge number of opportunities in the U.S. to play for NCAA, things like that. And so we see girls, just 100, like we had our tryouts in September, and we had about 1,250 kids trying out for 350 competitive spots or traveling team spots. Most of that, 2/3 of that was girls, if not more.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing. I
that's
think
impressive.
one thing that I find there's a lot of questions around is starting a sport a little later than at the earliest age you can start. And so joining a program when everyone else has been in the program for years and you decided to either change sports or take up volleyball, how does that look like integrating someone in who is new, probably has played before, but not at the level that you would be organizing or figuring out where they fit in your league, but how do you fit someone in who would be, I don't know, 5, 6 years behind some of their fellow athletes who have been playing since the start?
So we are very big on multi-sport at younger ages and exposure. So it's really about building athleticism. And the best way to do that is not really be focused on a single sport in our experience. It's the kids that do gymnastics, they play some hockey, they do this, and they sort of develop skills all over the place. Volleyball is a really tough sport in relative terms. Like I noticed you heard, Ryan, you were saying your son is playing triple ball at grade 7.
Yeah.
The rules to make the game more fun for kids as you get younger. So, and in fact, at an even younger age, it's called smash ball, and it's played on a badminton net, and it's all about hitting and less about, when we all played,
Yeah.
or dating myself,
Yeah.
you would serve, with the ball would land 5 times, and then you would rotate, somebody else would serve. There was never really a rally. And so we've adjusted that. So what we found is that the kids that are coming in later, so to speak, but have developed a lot of athleticism, they do fine. That isolation of learning a specific element of the sport early on is good, but it doesn't make up for the abilities that you learn from running, throwing, skipping, doing all of those other things. So
Yeah.
it's unlike other sports, it seems it's not as critical because you need to be quite smart to play volleyball, I like to think. And
Mhm.
because it takes multiple steps to actually score in the game. And so your ability to think may become more important than some athletic skills. And so early on in the game, you can win just because you're smart,
Right.
as opposed to being super tall or, particularly athletic. So, but over time, just like in any other sport, the person who's 6'7" has a clear advantage over someone that's, my height of 5'8" or something.
Yeah. What's the earliest age you have for signups?
So we start as young as 7 years of age. But if I look at the distribution of our athletes, very few at that age, but they start to, we look like a bit of the usual distribution of athletes, but it really focuses around 13, 14 years of age is when we have the most athletes coming in.
So yeah, I've got 2 very smart athletes. A curler, very smart. Volleyball, very smart. Hockey, not so smart. Just run and gun. But that there's really something to the late sport athleticism because I draw a lot of parallels. There's a few sports that fit that mold. I think my niece is a rugby player at Queens. Again, picked the sport up quite late, and I think especially for women, that's a sport that is growing and welcoming of women and just seeing such growth. But something you mentioned is really interesting, which is making the sport fun and accessible and finding different ways to make it engaging. Volleyball, triple ball, I thought it was great. I went and watched, and just first of all, not just being frustrated that they can't do it and receive a serve. Triple ball really solved that. Tennis, shrinking the courts, different size rackets, different size balls. That's something that I think the more dominant sports suffer from.
Mm-hmm.
Hockey changed the size of the rink for young kids, and it almost ended the entire sport. It was so controversial. So yeah, accessibility, huge. So it's really neat to hear you say that, taking in athletes. It's probably why you're seeing such growth numbers.
I think so.
What about the shift from, are you seeing a lot of your athletes progress naturally through more of a recreational level to more of the competitive, busier schedule, playing year round? And when does that start to happen?
So we probably, like many other sports, are following the long-term athlete development model. So, our goal is to have like people playing volleyball for life. So initially we see, and we haven't actually done the data on this, but we're getting better at collecting and looking at it. But we see a lot of kids come in early at 13, 12, 13. We have a lot of teams at that point. And then by the time they get to 14, 15, 16, by 16, they've really made a decision that I want volleyball to be the program that I want to follow, or the sport that I want to play. And so we'll see then now we have the issue of height and athleticism and those types of things start to come into play. So we've tried to build our programs to have the right level of competition, so meaningful competition for the athletes, combined with reasonable costs and what they're hoping to do. So, I mean, we know, like, if I look through the last 40 years, we probably have had maybe 20 professional or 25 professional volleyball players come out of the club, a few Olympians. But we're not talking about, the majority of the world here is not going to be an Olympian.
Yeah.
We wish they would always, but it's unlikely. And so we're really kind of rethinking about, we're always going to keep an eye out for those types of folks. But the rest, they really want to train like they're going to be going to the Olympics. They want to train, they want to invest the time and energy. And so we've added all of the elements like mental performance training. We've added strength and conditioning training, nutrition, those types of things. And so we're trying to build the club around having the right level of competition for the skills and capabilities that the athletes that we have. But that majority of it is, the national level teams that we have, that's maybe 100 athletes. The rest are, the other 4,000 are in other programs that may not lead to being a national champion, an Olympian or things like that.
Those other elements that you add in are just good for general life skill too. So you're not only creating a competitive environment where you get to play that competition, you get to train, but all those other things like nutrition and mental toughness, all that is still helpful for life. So you're still developing like you're developing adults, like you're developing people into people that they need to be, along with trying to achieve something in their sport. So that's really special as well, that's something that's provided in your club.
Yeah, we've actually made a focus of it this year, and we're in a bit of I don't want to say a pilot program. We're converting the club to have a focus. Our mission has always been about inspiring and instilling a love of the sport in athletes, but it's also while sort of teaching them valuable skills and behaviors that are going to go beyond just the volleyball court. Any team sport is great for, simulating the work environment or all sorts of things. We, over the years, traveling around and being at tournaments, we would do things differently than other clubs. We would line up all the bags at the end of the court, or we would do, specific things. And it would be quite common for coaches or other teams to go, oh, what are they doing? Oh, well, that's just the Maverick way of doing it. And so this coin of the Maverick way, we've actually now sort of boiled it up to realize there's some basic principles and behaviors that we want our Mavericks to demonstrate that we think will ultimately lead to building better humans. And so we've actually put in a program now that we're in the first year of, called the Maverick Way, where we're actually teaching these 9 behaviors. And they'd be simple things that, you'd expect everybody to learn at some point in their life. But we realize that it's not necessarily taught in school. It may be taught at home, maybe not. But things like, how to be a good teammate. Well, being on time, being respectful, being inspirational, those are really important.
Wow.
How to actually compete. So be brave, like take a chance. Our most successful athletes are the ones that, take a chance and are courageous. Those types of things. How do you learn? How do I be reflective? How do I, be thankful and grateful for the stuff? So we're for 40 years, we've produced great athletes, and now we're hoping to do the next 40 years to produce not just great athletes, but great people that maybe can at some point lead Canada into the rather challenging times we're having right now.
Yeah.
Well,
that is amazing to hear, Greg. I think if anyone listening can take away anything here, is that all clubs should create and live by a way, right? It's the Maverick Way. It's a really inspiring thing. And a lot of clubs talk about, I think what you said is to instill a love for the game. That's always an mission statement of these youth clubs, but so few of them live them. Competition creeps in, politics creeps in. I think a lot of these clubs lose the focus of, what are we actually working towards and who are we trying to help and how are we trying to help them? one of the things that I noticed, I went to watch friends of mine who play in the Maverick program, two of them. There was a huge tournament. I think it was at the EY Center over by the airport. I could not
Yes.
believe this. It looked like hundreds of games going on at the same time. What an amazing environment. But the one thing that I noticed right away, being from a highly competitive hockey world, was fair play and the coaching that went on. So once that set was done, the whole team flipped. Even the best player, generally speaking, rotated, and a new crop came in. And so your website and your motto talks a lot about development as being the key part.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm teeing you up here. Is that really what's at the forefront? Is we're just trying to develop these athletes, instill the Maverick way over winning and competitiveness and climbing in the Ontario rankings?
So, great question. We are probably like every other club. There's a range of what that means to different coaches in the club. I think we would all agree, all of the coaches would say, listen, our goal here is to develop these great humans that are also fantastic athletes. We would all agree to that. And we've put in particular rules in the club to ensure fair play to a certain point, and so has Ontario Volleyball and Volleyball Canada, and they've done this in an effort to make sure that we don't go down the slippery slope of teaching the wrong things. There is a time and place where competition is important.
Mhm.
And it's something that you can't get away from. You go into the real world, you are competing for a job, or you're competing for this and competing for that. So we do expect that at a certain level, and this is mostly we're tying to our national 18U level, by that point, performance and competition matters. And so we do expect you to perform. And if you're not able to perform, that's fine. We're going to give you another shot at it another time, but we need somebody who will be able to go perform. So the idea of performance it's important. We can't get away from it, but it's an element of developing the athlete. So they need to know, how do I perform under pressure? How do I achieve what I'm trying to do? We just throttle it back and forth based on the level that they're playing at.
Right. Because I noticed, I found the Ontario Volleyball provincial rankings, and I'm seeing almost at least one team, probably your top tier team, ranked in the top 10 in the province. So you're obviously balancing it very well between managing competition and high intensity with development, because you're doing something right.
It's a tricky, it's a tightrope at all times, for sure. And I would love to know how other clubs manage it.
Mhm.
I mean, we are not generally a win at all costs club. That is not our intent. We're slow, steady wins the race. And
Yeah.
what we find is the majority of our athletes of all our national teams progress to secondary school, university, and college to play there. So our view is that is success for us. We would love that they continue to play at a higher level, maybe even play on the national team. But if you look at a lot of other clubs, their pinnacle is at winning an 18U championship. And unfortunately, we don't see their players carry on past that. So for us, it's about where do you mark success? And for us, it's definitely down the road, not necessarily what happens in the club at this age.
Yeah. I think that makes for a really good culture to start with, though, because you don't feel like you're close to being on the chopping block every year if you have a bad year. And we've talked so much in previous episodes about tryouts and different tryouts for different sports and how stressful that can be on the athlete, and to the point where some of them underperform in those situations to their abilities because it's so stressful. So always making a spot for any of your athletes that are there creates a culture of acceptance and probably better performance in the long run. So I think that's a really good model to have.
We're trying to move a bit more to how European clubs work. First of all, European clubs don't stop at 18. They have parents and, uncles, and they go all the way up to adult. And so they have a really interesting community developed because of it. So your parents might play volleyball, the kids play volleyball, and everybody's playing volleyball all the time. The other thing that they do is they have a tendency to move up and down based on how are things going and where do they need players. Right now in Canada, we're very focused on, like, once you make a team, you're on that team. And I think if we could to make the club a better club, it would be getting people used to the idea that there will be times where you'll be asked to go play at a higher level because you're needed and you'll get called up. And it's possible that because you do well, we're going to ask you to stay. And someone else who's maybe struggling at some point in their career is going to go down, but they'll always have the chance to go back up. So the fluidity, I think, is something that I would love to see the club get to. I don't know if we'll be able to do it. Like, Europe is not Canada, so we'll see. We'll see. But I think definitely getting to a larger concept of a club including the parents and athletes and other folks. We're really trying to push towards that.
I've often said that for hockey, Greg. And when you say things like that, it'd be nice to have fluid rosters where kids can go up and down. Down is when people lose their minds. Up is fine. Down is not good.
Yeah.
But you just want people playing at the right level, right? That aligns with their current athleticism, stage, mentality, maturity, all those things. So that's
Well,
interesting to hear that Europe does that.
We've said before too, like being the worst player on a team, whether it's a higher level or not, it's not great for development. It's not great for confidence. It's not great for overall attitude out there because you're not in a position that you're suited to be in. I mean, you're not on a team you're suited to be on yet. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to gain a ton of experience playing on the next team below, learn something, like tune your skills up. And then maybe you gain enough to get back on the top team that you wanted to be on. But being on that team and not being good enough to be on that team, I've been there. It's not fun. It's not a fun experience. So everyone you're going to get the most out of your athletic careers being on the team you're supposed to be on and your skill level matches at that time. So it's nice that you have a bit of that fluidity.
Yeah, it's the things you learn as being the lowest on the totem pole versus being a leader on the court when you're with the best player. Like it just, all of those skills are really important. Use those in the real world when you get to, you're on a work team and you are the expert at programming or whatever it is. All of those skills they're all transferable. The other thing that we've done that I think Europe does better than we do as clubs go is we've expanded the club to realize. So for example, we used to have kids that would come up and eventually by the time they get 16, 17 or 18, they haven't grown and the level of competition they're playing at, it may be dropping. Now we have a place for them to play, but they want to contribute more. I don't know if there's a direct correlation to height and coaching ability, but it seems the shorter you are, the better a coach you are. So we're starting to introduce programs where the kids now remain in the club. Maybe they're not playing on the top team, but we've introduced a learn to referee program. So they become certified officials and they can work within the club. We're toying with a learn to coach program because just like every other sport, we're always struggling to find coaches. And so if they get the bug early and they really like teaching and they want to coach, then they have opportunities to do that in the club. And then the last one is trying to put in a learn to lead program. So you've got these great athletes who maybe that again haven't grown to the height they were hoping to, and they're not at the national level. They're not working 4 or 5 days a week doing volleyball. Well, they can still play 2 or 3 times a week, but then go into other stuff in the club that really becomes important to developing them as humans and making better humans in the future.
That's really great. I had one question of something you touched on, because we've talked about this a lot too, is like encouraging multi-sport households when they're growing up. And I think that this is something that a lot of sports aren't great. Well, mainly hockey just fills the schedule so much that making multi-sport very challenging. How do you go about that? So if there's overlap on the two sports with volleyball, how do you manage that within your organization so that there isn't tension among players or the coach or a player that's continually not showing up for practice and their teammates are let down? How do you go about that? Because I think that this is important for everyone to listen to get more of this multi-sport, at least for these young kids going.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we would all agree, like there's really at a 13U level, there can't be any competition that is so critical to their development that at 13 years of age, you couldn't have kids going to other sports, at the younger ages. And we have a bit of a sort of a decision policy guidelines on how to make choices for athletes. If you're at 17 or 16 years of age and you've got this is where we're starting to see separation between, single sport or multi-sport. So at that point, if you're still in multi-sport, we would say, listen, if you have a high level competition, like that's a priority for whatever sport you're in. And then it might be, for certain practices coming up to that might be the sport, that you should be attending. And so they can use some of that decision-making thinking to get them to where they want to go. And again, we try to really at the younger ages, we put in fair play. So, for example, you know what, you're 6 on the court this time. The second game, it's a different 6. So it doesn't matter how well you played, or whether you were at the practice or not, you're still going to play. So we've kind of made that spectrum from youngest to oldest, and not to get into specifics about how we do it, but that basic concept of if you've got responsibilities to 2 teams, you sit down, you look at the schedules, you plan, you say, listen, this is likely going to happen here. Coaches, are you okay with this? Can you adjust accordingly? Communication has always been the number one problem in the world. If you don't communicate, it's, things go wrong. But the solution to most problems in the world is just good communication. So we're hoping to teach the kids that, this is the thing. You sit down, you plan, you talk. So it's a bit more than just about, am I at the competition or not? So really be clear and upfront with people.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember I was still like an early teen, but I was curling competitively, and soccer became a year-round thing. And there was some overlap in practices, and I just kept getting in trouble from soccer when I had to be late or miss practice because of curling, to the point where I just quit because I was so tired of getting heat. And at that point, I couldn't have fought back a lot for myself. I was not the strong person I am today, but it just made me want to quit because I was like, everyone seems mad at me. The coach is mad at me. So I just was like, oh, I'm choosing curling then. And I just picked one, but I really did enjoy soccer. So it's a good option to have if you want to play multiple sports. Like, you have this open environment where you're going to encourage it and try to support the athletes who are in your program.
Yeah.
Well, how old were you when you had to sort of make those decisions?
I feel like I probably was around like 14.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's my guess.
That's around the age.
Yeah,
that's around the age Greg's talking about.
Because the different seasons. So I wasn't expecting to have to make a choice so quickly. Curling is a winter sport. Soccer is predominantly a summer sport. I wasn't expecting to have to make a decision one way or the other so quickly. But I was basically told that if I wasn't in the winter program and didn't show practice, I wasn't going to make the team in the summer anyways, even though my summers are wide open. So I just ended up choosing to go with curling, which I think was the right call with
on behalf of the nation. Thank you.
But I did still really like soccer, and I think it was good for just development to play 2 completely different sports, different times of the year. One's a small team, one's a big team. I feel like I learned so much from both experiences when I was younger, and it was beneficial to me. And I was sad I had to choose one, but I was grateful I did play both. So I think that that's something that's great for everyone to hear, is like, if you want your child to play in more than one sport, volleyball will accommodate.
Yeah, I'd like to think we're more accommodating. Now, again, there are always exceptions to the rules. We probably have some coaches that are, further on the spectrum that are like, no, this is too important at 18U for you to be doing, all these things. But certainly in the 12, 13, 14, 15, there should be no reason we can't do multi-sport.
Well, Greg, one of the things I've heard about your club is the predictability. I know when you map out a hockey season or a baseball season in the summers, you never know from week to week what's coming. And what I've heard is, these volleyball seasons that even the 16U team can be really mapped out at the beginning of the year, September, all the way through. You're dealing with gyms, which is a little easier, and predictable tournaments, but that helps in the busy world of multi-sport athletes, because very rare now to find any sport that you can have a competitive success at and only do it for 3 months. So there's got to be a recognition that you as clubs have to do a better job of trying to make it easier. One of those ways is predictability and sharing schedules and expectations early on.
Definitely. I know so all of our coaches will produce the annual plan that, get them into the right mesocycles and all of this and that. And then of course, like, we will have conflicts with high school. So, the senior boys season is, we delay the club season for senior boys. We kind of minimize the practice time, let them play their high school seasons because it's really important to a lot of them. And then once that's done, we can then take over. And so it's really important to blend with the high schools. It can be very difficult, though, I've got to say, because we have various levels of, kids that at some high schools that are very, very intense, other high schools that are a bit more relaxed about it. So there's, again, communication is the number one thing to do.
Maybe one last thing that I'm itching to ask you, Greg, before we let you go to your pina coladas and on vacation here, is parents. It's a big topic, and the intensity of the sport and parents and politics and all these things. I always hope that there's someone listening from soccer and tennis and hockey that can take something away. How do you manage parents, their expectations, their frustrations, their input, how they manage their own athletes? It's a big loaded question, but how is Maverick doing it? And are you having success with it, or is it a big problem?
So, yeah, we've kind of always watched to try to make sure that, and I don't want to, hockey is ahead of us in years. And so what we've seen is the path that have gone down and to become, I don't want to say a traditional hockey parent, but you hear of these nightmare stories where, fistfights are breaking out on the ice and things like that. And there was always been a conscious effort to ensure that that type of stuff never happens in volleyball. So what do? We certainly provide, again, a huge amount of communication with the parents about what we're doing and what we're trying to do. Always have an understanding from coaches about how they're making decisions on playing time and things like that. So coaches are trying to be very upfront about things.
Yeah.
And then there's some things that are coach discretion, period, and that's it. We always try to have at the senior levels, how do I put it, non-parent coaches. So that's another one that helps, is that we're lucky enough to have some really awesome seasoned veterans that are not parents or former parents of coaches that are there. But we will let, some parent coaches as assistant coaches for sure. They'll be there as well, but they're never in a final sort of say decision kind of spot. So that helps with playing time and things like that. What we're trying to do with the Maverick way and these 9 behaviors is say, hey, listen, parents, coaches, athletes, staff, everybody who's in the club, we all agree to follow this. And so you need to demonstrate this with your kids at home. We're going to demonstrate it here at the club. And so those basic things about respect and, are things that we ensure that the parents are well aware of before we go into. Now, we're bringing this into the club, so we've only got our first year under our belt, so it'll take a few years to get it all converted. But I think so far, parents have been very receptive to the comments or the concept.
Yeah. Well,
they want a good environment.
Yeah, one of the things that I always took me by surprise when my boys started get involved with baseball was that the parents are right on top of you as athletes. Same thing with volleyball. Parents are right on the sidelines. Have you had to manage that, or are there directives from the province or national level on that?
Definitely. There is that, there's basic expectations of, properly. We don't yell. It's different. I feel like it's different than in other sports. We're very proactive, supportive of our team, but you're never really yelling anything bad about another team. I don't see that very often. That's very, very rare to hear. Yeah, there are basic guidelines. All the parents have to actually follow through Ontario Volleyball, have to go through a basic, course of being a parent for sport, for athletes. Yeah. But the other part that we're trying to do more of is actually train parents on, what do you do on the car ride home after the practice? Like, great. What is the best thing to do? Like when your child is quiet, they don't want to say anything. What do you do? So we're working right now to develop more and more of those materials so parents know what to do and how to just be a good parent. We had a planning session one time, and basically the motto that we thought for parents was just don't. So whatever you're thinking of doing, just don't do it. Just don't try to help them with this. Just don't get involved. Let the coaching staff and let everyone else help.
It's amazing.
It's hard to do, but just don't do it.
I think we found your motto. The Maverick way. Just don't.
Yeah, don't.
There you go.
To a certain extent, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, I don't want to keep you any longer. I'm sure we should, we could keep this going, but we got to let you get back to vacation. Thank you on short notice for joining Rinkside and sharing the volleyball world with all of our listeners, and really insightful. You're doing amazing things over there, Greg, for you and your whole team. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ryan. Appreciate it. And Emma, best of luck at the Olympics. I was hoping to go, but ended up having to come here instead. So we'll watch you on TV.
Thank you so much again for joining Rinkside, and our listeners. As always, everybody, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.